Yolo Basin Foundation was founded in 1990 to assist in the establishment of the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area. Since then, our mission has grown to expand the public's appreciation and stewardship for wetlands and wildlife in the Yolo Basin through education and innovative partnerships. We're proud to serve our community with a variety of programs and outdoor educational experiences. Back in 1990, we started offering field trips to what would become the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area in order to educate the community and provide support for protecting the wetlands at the end of Poudre Creek. We still offer public wetlands tours out to the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area today, and as well, we also offer tours to the City of Davis wetlands in partnership with the City of Davis. For students, we have a Discover the Flyway outdoor education program. Its goal is to provide a meaningful outdoor experience for students to facilitate learning about the agriculture, wetlands, and the wildlife here in our Central Valley. They start out here in the demonstration wetlands. They go through 4 different science and social studies based activities. After lunch, they get to borrow binoculars and a bird card, and we get to go out to a field trip to the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area where they get a time of discovery in nature. And for many of those students, this is their first time out in nature, so it's a really great experience for them. One program that I really enjoy is the California Duck Days Festival. It's a family-friendly annual wetlands and wildlife festival offered here at the demonstration wetlands. There's an exhibit hall of a bunch of local community organizations that have fun, hands-on activities for people of all ages. Kids can fish in the ponds out here, you can see baby ducklings, you can learn about duck calling, you can dissect an owl pellet, and much more. And there's also field trips and workshops for people of all ages. So you may have heard about the bats that live under the Yolo Causeway. If you want to learn more about them, we offer summertime bat talk and walks. It's a 45-minute presentation where you learn about bat natural history. And after the presentation, we carpool out to the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area, when we get to see the flyout of an estimated 250,000 Mexican free-tail bats as they emerge for their nightly insect feast. It's a fun and enjoyable event for the whole family. Throughout the year, we offer an Explorer Series program. It's a program of science-based field trips and hands-on workshops for adults and for those who want to deepen their understanding of the nature around us. They're led by professionals and experienced naturalists and leaders in their field who love sharing their knowledge and experience with all of us. They're really interesting, and I always learn a lot on those, and the proceeds of these events support our environmental education programs. We also offer a Flyway Night Speaker Series. It's a program that highlights conservation issues, wetlands and wildlife research, and natural history of Northern California. It's offered through 6 months of the year, and it's always an enjoyable experience. I always learn something new about our natural history of this area. More recently, we started offering our Discover the Wetlands summer camps. It's an enjoyable experience for kids throughout the summer to come out here to the wetlands and learn about wetlands and wildlife with hands-on activities. We've also started offering Wetlands Wagon, which is an in-school program where we bring wetlands into the classroom for students. All of these programs and events would not be possible without the help of our over 200 wonderful volunteers. This summer, as you know, many things have changed, and our staff and our volunteers have done an incredible job at transforming our programs into valuable and interactive virtual programs. Starting with summer camps, we were able to provide a box of summer camp materials to the students before the camp began, and they were able to sign into Zoom and do the activity, the science activity and experiment, and a craft each day virtually with the instructor here in the wetlands. When we couldn't hold our usual bat talk and walks this summer, we were able to transform them and offer a YOLO Bat Chat. You could sign into Zoom and see and learn about 3 species of local bats, and also ask all of your pressing bat questions. This fall, during this time of distance learning, we're offering our Discover the Flyway learning activities, both live and recorded in virtual formats. Students and teachers can sign in from their homes to meet an instructor or docent here in the wetlands to do a hands-on learning activity. The recorded learning activities are available for the teacher and student to use at any time that's convenient to them. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the programs and events that Yolo Basin Foundation has to offer. And I hope you'll join us out here in the wetlands soon. I think you'll find that spending time in nature is a fun and rewarding experience, and a great way to relax and center yourself away from the busyness of everyday life. If you want to learn more about our programs and to support us, you can go to yolobasin.org for more information. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name's Mike. I'm a docent here at the Yolo Basin Foundation, and I'm standing in the demonstration area a couple of miles away from the very large Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area. And this is where we hold classes. And I'm going to speak about identifying plants of the wetlands. Why do we need to identify plants? One reason, probably going through your mind right now, is they might be edible or they might be poisonous, and we need to be able to communicate to one another about their edibility or toxicity. They might be important for wildlife, for butterflies, for birds, and so forth. You might want to do research on them. So we need to be able to communicate to each other about the plants. We need to know their names in order to do that. So that's what we're going to do today. And how do we identify plants? Well, we break it down into steps, make it easier. First of all, we're going to determine the plant's habitat. And what is a habitat? Correct? It's a place where plants and animals live. And plants, like animals, are adapted to certain habitats. So there are certain plants adapted to live in the wetlands, that interface between land and water. So we're going to talk about plants of the wetlands today. So first of all, we want to know the habitat. And in our demonstration area here, we have 4 primary habitats. One of them is behind me. This pond dries up during the summer. So it's a seasonal pond. So that's what we call this habitat, a seasonal pond. And there are some plants that are adapted to live in a seasonal pond. There are seeds under the water on the surface of the mud right now, not growing, waiting for the water to evaporate. As the water evaporates, then they germinate and they grow and they produce seeds. The seeds fall down to the bottom of the pond. In the winter, it fills up with water again during our rainy season. And those seeds on the bottom of the pond are one of the important food sources for ducks. On this side is a permanent pond. A permanent pond, just as it sounds, has water in it year-round. So there are not many plants that can live in a permanent pond because the roots of plants need air. And so they have a special adaptation. They have hollow stems, large air-filled tubes that run from the leaves into the roots. Rice is one example. The rice that we grow around here is in water, rice paddies we call it. And the stems are hollow, so it takes air out of the oxygen out of the air, and it goes down the stem into the roots. So not many plants can grow in permanent water, but some important ones can. Behind me is our third habitat. You see plants growing on either side of the ponds here, near but not in the water. So their roots are near the water. The roots are probably taking water from those water sources, but the bushes and the trees themselves are outside of the water. So this habitat is called a riparian habitat. Riparian, very important habitat for a lot of plants, for a lot of animals. It has a high diversity of life. So a riparian habitat next to the water but not in the water. Finally, the fourth habitat we have here at the demonstration area is this way. And this habitat consists of grasslands and trees. And in California, we think about oak trees in our grasslands. If you drive into the foothills, either the Coast Range or the foothills of the Sierra, lots of oak trees growing in grasslands. We call this habitat oak grassland or oak savanna. So those are the 4 habitats. So when we talk about plant identification, the first question I will ask is, what is the plant's habitat? After you get the habitat, Then in your booklet, which will be provided to you by your teacher, you will go to that habitat, and it might be 2 or 3 pages in the booklet, and you will look through the plants in that habitat and try to match up the plant in your booklet with the one that I'm pointing out today. Our first plant is this one. And the first thing, remember, you have to decide its habitat. So what is its habitat? Seasonal pond, permanent pond, riparian, or oak grassland? Correct, it's oak grassland, or sometimes we call it oak savanna. This plant is fairly common in California, in our foothills. It loses its leaves, they dry and they fall off earlier than any other plant, any other tree. It's a bush or a small tree. It has compound leaves. So this is a leaf, and it has a number of leaflets per each leaf. So you will want to go to your pages in the oak grassland and look for a plant that has compound leaves. It has very big seeds. This is a small one because they're still growing at this point. They get quite large. The seeds of this bush, small tree, get about this big. In fact, it has the biggest seed of any native plant in North America. It's true that coconuts are bigger, and there are some big tropical things like that that aren't really native to North America. They're bigger, but of native plants, this one has the largest seed. And the seed is very interesting. All parts of this plant are poisonous. So the Native Americans learned that if they took the seed and ground it up and threw it into the pond or stream, the fish would become stupefied. They would kind of be paralyzed, and they would float to the surface for easy pickings. So it's a very interesting plant. This is our second plant. What is its habitat? This is a permanent pond, and it is growing in the water. So this one is able to grow in water, in a pond that has water year-round. You also find it in seasonal ponds, but here we see it in the permanent pond. It is one of the most important plants of the wetlands of our Yolo Bypass wildlife area. It grows from shoots near its base. It has long leaves that are strap-like, so they're long and they're narrow and they're thin. And you can identify it by its seed head. And this is where the seeds are produced, on these structures that look like hot dogs. And there are hundreds of thousands of seeds in each head like this. Those seeds eventually dry and they break off the seed stalk and they float through the air. They're very fluffy. You can imagine that there are uses for these seeds, and the Native Americans used the seeds for mattresses, for maybe anywhere you needed padding, like diapers, maybe bedding, anywhere where you needed something soft. They're very soft. Hundreds of thousands of them on a seed stalk. Now this plant is edible. Every part of it is edible. But the Native Americans would eat the lower shoot, this part. And you can eat it raw or you can cook it, but every part of this plant is edible. And it's, again, one of the most important plants of the wetlands. Plant number 3, and its habitat is along the edges of seasonal and permanent ponds. Now in your booklet to identify this plant, you'll want to look under seasonal pond, but it is it does grow along the banks of both kinds of ponds. So this plant has a very fibrous root system. It grows in dense clumps like this. It ties the soil together, and so it helps prevent erosion on the banks of ponds. So it's very important that way. It's also a good habitat for animals because it's so dense. The leaves are long and thin. The plant is moderately short. The leaves are interesting because the edges of the leaf, if you look under a magnifying glass or a microscope, they look like saw teeth. And while I can rub my fingers this way on the leaf, I can't go down this way or I'll cut myself. So we say this plant has a serrated edges like a saw blade. Plant number 4 grows along waterways, so it lives in a riparian habitat. So to identify this plant, go to your pages with plants that live in a riparian habitat. It's an interesting plant. It has leaves all year round. They are minutely toothed. Can you see the small teeth on this plant? So they're long and narrow with small little teeth. They're soft, but they do have teeth. And because this plant has leaves all year round, it was one of the few plants that the miners could use to feed their mules in the wintertime. So the mules would eat this plant, and that's the key to its name. So it's a shrub. It lives in riparian habitat. It has long, narrow leaves that are slightly toothed, and it has leaves all year round. Plant number 5 grows in our oak grasslands, a very common tree in the foothills, both in the coastal foothills and the Sierra foothills, and up into the Sierra. It gets to be a very large tree. It has leaves that are deeply divided, like this. This is a very typical leaf. It grows to be 300-400 years old, and it produces acorns. So acorns are the seed of this tree, and they are a very important food source for the Native Americans and for many animals, scrub jays, many birds, deer, raccoon, squirrels, many animals eat this seed. So number 5 grows into a very large tree in our oak grasslands. Hi, this is the second half of the wetland plant identification exercise. My name's Mike, and we're going to continue with plant number 6. And I'm standing by this tree. It's a pretty big tree. It's growing near but not in the water. So you remember the habitat. First determine the habitat and then go to the pages in your booklet and look for trees. This particular tree has long, narrow leaves, unlike the plant number 4, which had edges that were toothed like saw teeth. This plant has leaves that have smooth edges, but the leaves are long and narrow. It's the most common tree in the wetlands, so it's a very important one to know. It's a plant that was used by Native Americans in many ways. The twigs are long and flexible. It was used for basket making, for example. It has an interesting property. There's a compound in it. It's the same compound that is found in aspirin, which can take away your aches and pains. And the Native Americans made a tea out of it or chewed the bark. It's
not quite that simple, but they did utilize it to relieve aches and pains. So it's a very important plant in the wetlands. This is plant number 7, and this plant is growing in the water. It's at the edge of the water here, but it's growing in the permanent pond. So go to the habitat page, and this plant number 7, along with plant number 2, are the most important plants, the most common plants in the wetlands. Very important plant for wildlife, for habitat and for food, and Native Americans used it in all sorts of ways. It has long stems. It actually does not have leaves, even though this looks like a leaf. But Native Americans used it as rope. They connected it together and made long rope. They made boats out of it, made houses out of it, clothes, shoes, so many uses for this plant. It has hollow stems so that the air can reach the roots, because roots need air to grow. And that's why plants that grow in the water often have hollow tubes within, or hollow stems, for the air to reach the growing roots. It is a very important habitat for birds. The marsh wren, for example, makes nests inside this plant. And this plant, unlike plant number 2, has round stems. Number 2 had flattened stems, so that's how you can distinguish the two. They often grow together or near one another. This is plant number 8. It grows in areas just outside of the wetlands, on land that's a little bit higher and drier than the wetlands. This one's growing in the grasslands that you can see. So go to the pages with that kind of habitat and look for shrubs or bushes. It's not a tree. It's an interesting plant. It's common in California, especially in the foothills. It has leaves that are green all year round. So animals use it as a habitat. It's a great place to hide. And it's unusual in that it flowers in the winter, not in the spring or summer like most of our plants. Plant number 9 is this very tall tree. It's the tallest tree that grows in the wetlands. What is its habitat? It's growing near but not in the water. Although the roots of this tree are always down in water somewhere, so it grows very close to water. It has heart-shaped leaves like this. Remember, the most common tree in the wetlands, number 6, had long, narrow leaves. This tree has heart-shaped leaves. It's an important plant tree for wildlife. We have beavers in the wetlands, and beavers chew wood, and this is one of their favorite sources of food. It's also a very important habitat nesting site for birds. This is our last plant, plant number 10. Like many of our plants, this one grows near the water. Not in the water, but near the water. And it is a shrub. It has compound leaves, meaning that this is a leaf and these are all leaflets of one leaf. That's one characteristic. It produces fruit that are orange to red, and these are edible, a good source of vitamin C, and the Native Americans use this. And even today, people will make tea out of the fruit of this shrub. This shrub also has thorns, very sharp thorns, so you don't want to run through this one. It is an important place for animals to hide under and rest and nest.
Welcome to the Yolo Basin Foundation Summer Bat Programs. where we educate thousands of people every year about the importance of bats. All ages of people enjoy seeing the live bats. In person, up close, and in their show boxes, and projected large on the screen and displayed in front of the room.
Here's the Mexican free-tailed bat, and that's free as in F-R-E-E. And the Mexican free-tailed bat is, well, it's our star, right? These guys are amazing flyers, and they have many adaptations for speed. So that short fur, less drag, right? They have little wrinkly lips, pretty good size eyes. Yeah. Their teeth are smaller. Can you show us your teeth? Yeah. Smaller teeth. And smaller teeth don't weigh as much. So again, an adaptation for speed. You can see her thumbs there.
And then we travel through the wildlife area where we watch the bats fly out from underneath the Yolo Causeway, where they live in the expansion joints and snuggle in close during the day, and then in the evening they fly.
And what was explained to us behind us too. Wind on the entire stream of bats. Oh, it's bigger than that. It seems like no, this is a flock, but it's not. I just mean, this seems so much different than just a flock of birds. Because of just the stream of them.
And then in the summer of 2020, we adjusted our program to a hybrid version where people could still see the PowerPoint presentation through Zoom.
Three different kinds, 3 different species that are native to the Central Valley of California, and in some cases live in many other places too. So like the Mexican free-tailed bat, it's native to here, but it has a really broad range. And so as you can see from its name, Mexican, right? It is not only in the United States, but it's in Mexico. It's in much of Central and South America. Big brown bat, all over North America. And the pallid bat is a Western species. Now you could be anywhere. I want to make sure you know where we are. So when I talk about the Central Valley of California, we are between Sacramento and Davis, just south of the freeway Highway 80.
And they still see the live bats via movie camera.
And being that she's so cooperative with echolocating, I like to offer her a mealworm. Now, mealworms are not what they would eat in the wild. They would eat beetles, but mealworms are the larva of a beetle, and mealworms stay in a bowl. So I train the bats that stay in captivity to eat mealworms from a bowl. So this is what a mealworm is. Right? They only eat them live. They don't eat the dead ones. Unlike my chickens who would eat it either way, right? And you want it? Says, oh, that's pretty good stuff. She'll eat, oh, maybe 20 of these a night. And she just crawls in the bowl, grabs one, and then crawls back up and hides in her cage. She has little cloth and little pouches to go into and such. And she'll take her mealworm, go and eat it, and then come back and get another one. So I don't know if you can see, she uses her tongue as well, and she'll often lick her lips. Keep her little muzzle nice and clean.
And then people would stay with their own cohort and travel in their own vehicles. Where we could watch and view, see the wildlife and the rice fields as we drive through the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area. We set out cones that were more than 6 feet apart and brought a microphone along so that people could still hear us and enjoy all the different elements of our tour. And finally, we would watch the bats. And we all enjoyed them.
Wetlands are special places, and we're so lucky to have the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area right here within view of the Sacramento skyline. We can enjoy the wetlands, we need to conserve the wetlands, and we need to spread the word about their importance. And that's what Yolo Basin Foundation is all about. Our mission is to expand the public's appreciation and stewardship of the wetlands and wildlife in the Yolo Basin through education and innovative partnerships. And this is what your Bucks for Ducks or contributions support. Our online auction is now open. Check it out to see what items you can't live without. Bid now and bid often. We also hope to see you at Saturday's Bucks for Ducks Showcase event, which includes our Fund a Need and our live auction. The event starts at 6 p.m. All the details and links can be found online at yolobasin.org/bucksforducks. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your support.